Here I have this function g, and I would first like to determine the vertex and whether or not the vertex of this parabola or this function g is going to be a maximum or a minimum of the function. And then I would like to go ahead and write the equation for the axis of symmetry. So my vertex is going to have, it's an ordered pair, so x-coordinate and y-coordinate, and the x-coordinate is going to be given by the opposite of b over 2a, and then the y-coordinate will be given by whenever I plug that x value into my function. Because remember, a function works input-output. I'm going to plug in an x value, and I'm going to get out a y value. So let's go ahead and do this. In standard form, I know my a is my leading coefficient, and my b is the coefficient of my linear term. So your x value here is the opposite of b over 2a, which is going to be the opposite of b, so the opposite of negative 10 will be positive 10, and then over twice my a value, so it looks like 10 over 4, or if I reduce that, that's going to be 5/2. Okay, so the x-coordinate for my vertex is 5/2, 5 over 2. So let's go ahead and plug that into my g function. So it'll be 2 times 5/2 squared minus 10 times 5/2, and then plus my 3. So here it's just a matter of working with fractions and going ahead and simplifying this expression. So 5/2 squared is 5 squared and 2 squared. So that's going to be 25 over 4 minus 10 over 1 times 5 over 2, and then plus 3. So as we just continue working this, I notice here that I can reduce this fraction down to 1 and 2, so it will be 25/2. And I'm actually not going to cancel and reduce here because I'm going to keep this common denominator of 2. So I'm going to go ahead and say minus 50/2, and then plus, and in order to get this to have a common denominator of 2 with the rest of them, I'm going to say 6 over 2. So now we have common denominators all the way across. So 25 minus 50 is negative 25, and then plus 6 will be negative 19/2. So my x value is 5/2, and my y value will be negative 19/2. So that means my vertex for this function here is going to be 5/2, negative 19/2. Okay, so is this vertex going to be a maximum or a minimum for my function? Well, I look at my leading coefficient, and my leading coefficient is positive, so I know that my parabola, when it's graphed, is going to open up, and this vertex here is going to be a minimum value. So I know my vertex, which was 5/2, negative 19/2, is going to be a minimum value for my function g. And also I would like to write the axis of symmetry equation. And remember, the axis of symmetry is this vertical line that passes through my parabola. That's going to go ahead and divide my parabola into two sides. And these two sides, of course, are going to be symmetric to one another according to this line, this axis of symmetry. So it's going to be x equals the x value, and my x value is 5/2. So my axis of symmetry here is going to be x equals 5/2.